Have you ever wondered how a single moment can change the course of many lives forever? Sometimes, all it takes is one small decision, one thought, one act of trust or kindness, and the entire world shifts in ways no one could predict. That is exactly what happened on a warm day in late September 2023 when a bright and determined young woman named Pava Marie LaPere made what seemed like a simple, everyday choice. In a matter of minutes, her life, her dreams, and the future she had worked so hard to build were shattered in a way that left everyone who knew her reeling with grief. This is the story of a life filled with big ideas and kind intentions, and how that life ended far too soon. Pava was born on January 21st, 1997, and spent her early years growing up in Tucson, a place known for its warm desert sun, rugged landscapes, and vibrant sunsets. Even as a child, she was the kind of person who noticed problems in the world and believed that they could be solved if only people came together with the right mindset. Many who knew her recall how, even in elementary school, she would try to help classmates who struggled with their homework or who felt left out at recess. It was as though she carried a sense of mission in her heart from a very young age, eager to improve the lives of those around her. When she moved on to Catalina Foothills High School, she continued to excel, not only in academics, but also in her determination to explore new ideas. Teachers remember her as a curious student who loved to dissect tough questions and debate possible solutions. Her parents saw how her mind brimmed with creativity and hope, and they did everything they could to nurture that spark. Pava was not just focused on her grades or her future. She was also involved in community programs that helped others, displaying a kindness and a willingness to serve. This spirit of giving would become an even bigger part of her life as she grew older and stepped into the world of business and technology. By 2015, after graduating from high school, Pava set her sights on Johns Hopkins University. It was a place known for its rigorous academic programs and its focus on innovation, exactly the kind of environment she craved. At first, she chose to major in computer science, enchanted by the power of technology to transform lives. She dove deep into complex coding problems, algorithms, and data structures, but something kept tugging at her heart. Pava realized that her true dream was not just to master technology for its own sake, but to blend it with an understanding of society's deepest needs. After 3 years, she switched her major to sociology, determined to figure out how to use entrepreneurship as a force for good. In between her studies, Pava found time to start Innov 8MD, a nonprofit designed to support student entrepreneurs in Maryland. She worked with other ambitious young people, offering them resources, networking opportunities, and moral support to chase their dreams. It amazed some people that she could juggle a tough university schedule and still commit so much energy to helping others start their own ventures. Yet for Pava, it was all part of a bigger mission. She wanted to inspire people to use business and technology to correct social imbalances. Instead of viewing success as simply making a profit, she believed success should be measured by how much good one could bring to the world. In 2018, when Pava was just 21, she co-founded a tech startup called EcoMap Technologies with a friend and fellow innovator named Sherrod. The vision behind EcoMap was to build artificial intelligence tools that could help businesses organize their data, make it easier for people to find the information they needed, and streamline communication so customers felt heard. It was a big dream for someone so young, but anyone who spoke to Pava came away feeling her unstoppable drive. She wanted EcoMap to be more than just a company. She wanted it to be a shining example of how technology could make life better for both businesses and the communities they served. The company soon gained attention, not just in Baltimore where it was based, but across the country. Pava's passion for leveling the playing field in business and technology was contagious, and investors began to see the potential in the AI tools her team was developing. By 2023, she had attracted enough attention to earn a spot on Forbes' 30 Under 30 list in the social impact category, a huge honor that recognized how her startup was making real waves. To outsiders, it looked like everything was going her way. She was young, talented, and on the path to becoming a major voice in tech. But most importantly, she stayed true to her core values of helping others and working toward a fairer society. By the fall of 2023, Pava was living in an apartment building in Baltimore, a city known for its rich history, bustling harbors, and vibrant neighborhoods. She felt at home there, surrounded by other entrepreneurs, thinkers, and students who shared her excitement about changing the world. Life was busy, of course, meetings, workshops, presentations, and endless planning sessions at EcoMap Technologies. Yet in the midst of this hectic pace, she never lost her warmth. Friends often talked about how, even with her busy schedule, she would set aside time for a coffee break just to ask how they were doing. She remembered birthdays, wrote thank you notes, and tried her best to stay grounded. On September 22nd, 2023, Pava walked into her apartment building, unaware that this day would mark the tragic end of all her hopes and dreams. According to the police who later reviewed security camera footage, she allowed a man named Jason Billingsley to enter the building around the same time she did. Maybe she thought he was a visitor or a worker who needed a hand. People often hold the door for strangers out of politeness. Whatever her reasons were, no one would have guessed what kind of danger this single moment of courtesy could unleash. The cameras recorded them both stepping onto an elevator, an everyday act that millions of people do every day without a second thought. That elevator ride would become the last time anyone saw Pava alive. Within an hour, Billingsley was captured on footage hastily leaving the building, wiping his hands on his shorts in a way that raised immediate suspicions. Something terrible had occurred on that quiet floor, out of sight of neighbors and security guards. As the minutes ticked by, the hallway remained silent. The elevator doors opened and closed for other residents, and life seemed to go on as usual. Yet for Pava, there would be no tomorrow. Days passed with no sign of her, and people who knew her began to worry when she missed important calls and meetings. That was not like Pava at all. She was someone who thrived on staying connected and would never just disappear without telling anyone. On September 25th, 2023, the alarm was raised more seriously when no one could reach her. Friends and family pleaded for someone to check her apartment. The building staff and the authorities finally searched the property thoroughly. What they discovered was beyond heartbreaking. Pava's lifeless body was found on the rooftop of her apartment building, bearing signs of strangulation and blunt force trauma. News of her death hit the community like a bolt of lightning. It was hard to believe that someone so full of life and purpose could be gone, just like that. In the days that followed, the police launched a thorough investigation, combing through security camera footage, talking to neighbors, and trying to piece together what had transpired in that building. Their leads all pointed to Jason Billingsley, who had a criminal background that included sexual assault and violence. It turned out he was not just a random stranger who got lucky slipping into the building. He was a convicted sex offender with a history of dangerous behavior. The revelation of Jason's identity made the tragedy even more unsettling. People began to question how someone with such a troubling past could be out walking the streets. A manhunt for Jason Billingsley started soon after, with the authorities warning the public that he was considered armed and dangerous. For nearly 5 days, Baltimore was on edge. Residents locked their doors, looked over their shoulders, and cautioned one another to stay safe. The memory of Pava's bright smile was weighed down by the fear that her killer could strike again if he was not caught in time. Finally, on September 27th, the police announced that Billingsley had been apprehended. Officers tracked him down and arrested him without giving him a chance to slip away once more. He was charged with first-degree murder, assault, and using a brick as a dangerous weapon. While many felt a sense of relief that he was off the streets, the anger and sorrow over Pava's death did not vanish. People could not help but think, if he had been behind bars in the first place, perhaps Pava would still be alive, continuing her work, changing the world one project at a time. As the investigation continued, horrifying details about Billingsley's past came to light. He had a criminal record that stretched back years, including convictions for first-degree assault and second-degree assault. He had once been arrested for rape at knife point, and in 2015 he pleaded guilty to a first-degree sex offense that resulted in a 30-year prison sentence. However, under a plea agreement, 16 years were suspended, meaning he would not serve the full time. Then, thanks to a policy in Maryland that allows inmates to earn good time credits for positive behaviors and educational efforts, Billingsley managed to get out even earlier. He walked free in October 2022, less than a year before he would commit the act that ended Pava's life. As if that were not disturbing enough, police found out that just 3 days prior to Pava's murder, Billingsley had allegedly used a maintenance worker ruse to gain entry into another woman's apartment. Once inside, He assaulted her at gunpoint, attempted to kill her, and even set fire to the apartment using an accelerant. The fact that he had been roaming free, posing such a grave danger to unsuspecting victims, left many people outraged. It was too late to save Pava, but the community demanded to know how someone with such a record had been allowed back on the streets. During the days after Billingsley's arrest, statements poured in from all sides. Pava's family was both heartbroken and relieved that the suspect was no longer free. They expressed gratitude to the Baltimore police for their relentless investigation, and they spoke of the immeasurable loss Baltimore had suffered with Pava's death. She was, after all, more than just a successful entrepreneur. She was a champion of Baltimore's potential, someone who believed that the city could thrive if people from all walks of life worked together. Her family, in their grief, chose to focus on celebrating her life and the huge impact she had made in her short time on Earth. Her company, EcoMap Technologies, released a statement that reflected both shock and deep mourning. Pava was their leader, their visionary, and their friend. They thanked everyone for the outpouring of support, but also called attention to the tragic nature of her death. People who worked alongside her felt a profound emptiness in her absence. They talked about how she brought energy and new ideas to every meeting, how she made sure that every voice was heard. Now they had to figure out how to carry on without the person who had been the heart of their work. The news also resonated deeply at Johns Hopkins University, where Pava's journey had truly begun. The institution recognized that she was one of their shining stars, a graduate who was not just forging a path in technology, but also showing how kindness and social impact could be built into the very framework of a startup. University President Ronald J. Daniels announced that the Center for Entrepreneurship would be rededicated in Pava's honor, a sign of how highly they regarded her achievements and how much they wanted her name to live on as a guiding light for future students. In December 2023, a memorial service was held at Johns Hopkins, drawing a crowd of friends, family, and admirers. As people took turns speaking, they painted a vivid picture of a woman whose energy and love for life were impossible to forget. Some recalled late nights in the university labs, where Pava would troubleshoot code while simultaneously brainstorming social projects. Others recalled how she always paused to say thank you, whether it was to someone who refilled her coffee cup or someone who funded one of her initiatives. The sense of loss was overwhelming. Yet it was also clear that she had left a significant legacy behind, a legacy that would inspire others to pick up where she left off. Meanwhile, legal wheels were set in motion to address a question that many had been asking. How could Billingsley, with his violent history, walk free so soon? Maryland Governor Wes Moore threw his support behind new legislation aimed at restricting the ability of sex offenders to earn good time credits, especially when their crimes were particularly severe. The bill aimed to ensure that people like Billingsley would not be able to shave years off their sentences through technicalities. As the legislative process unfolded, Pava's parents bravely testified in support of the bill, turning their personal grief into a plea for broader reform. The debate drew strong opinions from many corners. Some argued that second chances are important, that people can be rehabilitated, and that not everyone who goes to prison remains dangerous. Others pointed out that a record like Billingsley's suggested a pattern that should have been taken more seriously. The heartbreak of Pava's murder seemed to echo in every debate, reminding lawmakers that policies affect real people. In May 2024, the bill was signed into law by Governor Moore, a change that many saw as a direct response to the tragedy that befell a young entrepreneur who had given so much hope to others. Time marched on, and in August 2024, Billingsley finally stood in court to face the full weight of his charges. He pleaded guilty to first-degree murder in Pava's case, as well as to the rape, attempted murder, and arson charges from the earlier attack, just days before Pava's death. The judge delivered a harsh sentence: 3 life sentences with the possibility of parole, 2 to be served one after the other. While the legal language can sometimes be confusing, the effect was clear. Billingsley would likely spend the rest of his life behind bars. By the time he would be eligible to argue for parole, he would be in his 90s, making his release a distant possibility at best. For many who followed the trial, there was some sense of closure in knowing that Billingsley could never again harm another innocent person. Yet no punishment could truly undo the loss of Pava's bright spirit. In Baltimore, her friends and colleagues continued the work she had begun. EcoMap Technologies pressed on, updating its AI tools and expanding its reach to new clients, always guided by the memory of its founder, who had dreamed of using technology to uplift people, not merely to turn a profit. Her name remained on the lips of young entrepreneurs who saw in her story a reason to believe that even big ideas can come from small beginnings, and that success is measured by the good you do for others. From time to time, people would recall the night of September 22nd, 2023, and wonder if there was any small detail that might have saved Pava. Perhaps if she had come home just a few minutes earlier or later, or if she had chosen to go out with friends instead of returning to her apartment at that precise moment. Things might have ended differently. But these thoughts, though understandable, were ultimately futile. Life seldom grants us the power to roll back the clock, and the finality of that truth weighed heavily on everyone who cared about her. Still, those closest to Pava found ways to honor her. They shared stories about how she was not only a brilliant entrepreneur, but also a person who believed deeply in the potential for good within everyone. Her days at Johns Hopkins were filled with group discussions on how to use coding to address social issues, or how to leverage business models to support underserved communities. She had little patience for cynicism, always urging others to look at the bigger picture, to ask how their work might help bridge the gap between privilege and need. On social media, tributes poured in for months. Former classmates posted pictures from study groups, after-hours hackathons, and weekend volunteer projects, captioning them with thoughts on how Pava had left a lasting impression on their approach to life. People who had never met her but had read about her achievements in magazines or online articles left messages of sympathy and admiration. They pointed out that her life story served as a reminder that youth does not have to be a barrier to making a real impact on the world. Baltimore itself, a city that sometimes wrestles with its own image issues, rallied to remember one of its brightest stars. Local organizations held events to raise awareness about safety, reform, and the need to look out for one another. While no city is without its flaws, the sense of community that grew from this tragedy showed that even in the darkest moments, people can come together to support each other. Food drives were organized in Pava's name. Coding workshops were held at community centers, and scholarships were set up to encourage more women to enter the fields of technology and sociology, echoing the dual passions that had defined so much of her life. Throughout this time, Billingsley's mother also spoke out, offering her condolences to the victims and their families. It was a small but meaningful gesture, indicating that she, too, recognized the weight of what had happened. She could not change the fact that her son had committed awful crimes, but she could acknowledge the pain that he had caused. Some people in the community appreciated her willingness to speak up, while others felt that her words offered little comfort after such immense damage had been done. Still, it was a reminder that these tragedies ripple outward, affecting not just the victims, but also the families of perpetrators. As the first anniversary of Pava's death approached, those who loved her felt a mix of emotions. In one sense, a whole year without her felt unreal, as if she might walk through the door at any moment with a new idea or a fresh perspective on how to make EcoMap even better. In another sense, the weight of the year felt crushing, a long, heavy reminder that time moves on even when we wish it would stand still. Her parents, carrying an immeasurable grief, channeled their energy into the causes she cared about so deeply. They spoke at entrepreneurship conferences, volunteered at local nonprofits, and continued to push for legal changes that might keep others from experiencing a tragedy like theirs. Memorial services, large and small, were held in her honor throughout Baltimore. At some gatherings, attendees read passages from books that had inspired Pava, discussing the intersections of technology and social change. At others, people lit candles and stood in silence, letting the stillness reflect the sorrow and respect everyone felt. Each tribute was different, but they all shared a common thread: the belief that the best way to keep Pava's memory alive was to keep doing good in the world. By January 2024, when Maryland's legislative session resumed, Governor Moore renewed his call to fix the system that had allowed Billingsley to be released early. With Pava's case in mind, lawmakers debated how to strike a balance between offering rehabilitation and ensuring public safety. It was not a simple debate. Some argued that an overly harsh system punishes everyone, even those who might truly have turned their lives around. Others countered that repeated violent offenses or sex crimes warranted far stricter measures, especially when they show a pattern that endangers the community. Pava's parents, still reeling from their loss, spoke before the legislature. In measured but emotional voices, they recounted who their daughter was: a visionary, a helper, a loving friend, and how her life was cut short by someone with a known record of violence who had been let go. They acknowledged that no law would bring Pava back, but they hoped that her story could prevent future harm. The emotional power of their testimony resonated strongly with both lawmakers and the public. In May 2024, Governor Moore signed the new legislation into law, tightening the rules around good time credits for certain offenders. It was a moment that many called bittersweet. On the one hand, it was a positive step toward ensuring public safety. On the other hand, it was a reminder that Pava's death had been the catalyst for change, something no one would have wished for in exchange for her life. The new rules did not represent a perfect solution, but they did highlight a commitment to learning from tragedy, to ensuring that violent offenders are not released before they have truly served their time or proven that they no longer pose a threat. As summer turned to fall, the city of Baltimore went through its usual rhythms. School children returned to their classrooms, workers commuted through busy streets, and the harbor teemed with tourists soaking in the waterfront views. Yet, within certain circles, especially in tech, business, and nonprofit sectors, Pava's name continued to echo. People spoke of her as the one who wanted to fix big problems through entrepreneurship. They shared stories about her dedication, how she managed to be both the CEO of a startup and a mentor to many, never losing that personal touch. Somewhere in the hustle and bustle, a new group of young minds at Johns Hopkins discovered the story of a brilliant alumna who had begun her studies in computer science, switched to sociology, and founded a groundbreaking company in the space of just a few years. To them, she became an inspiration, a role model who showed that caring about people can be just as important as coding the perfect program. Her name, now attached to a Center for Entrepreneurship on campus, stood as a permanent reminder to every student who walked through those doors. You can use innovation to make the world better. The final chapters of Jason Billingsley's story were written in the courtroom, where he had no choice but to face the consequences of his actions. With the multiple life sentences, the question of whether he would ever leave prison seemed largely academic. Most people felt a measure of relief that he would never again have the chance to hurt someone the way he hurt Pava. Yet the underlying sadness remained. No matter how long he stayed behind bars, Pava was never coming back. Justice could punish, but it could not restore what was lost. In the quiet moments, when her friends and family let themselves think about her without the noise of legal proceedings or public statements, they remembered the little things: her laughter echoing in a university hallway, the way she tapped her pen when she was thinking through a problem, the sparkle in her eye when she talked about a new project that might help struggling communities. Those were the moments that defined her, the small joys that made her unique. They tried to keep those memories alive, to hold onto them like lanterns in the darkness of grief. People sometimes asked how one could keep faith in a world where someone as kind and gifted as Pava could be lost in such a terrible way. The answer, for many, lay in the countless actions her memory continued to inspire. Every time a young entrepreneur decided to focus on social impact rather than just profit, every time a donor funded a local nonprofit in her name, every time someone paused to help a stranger in the hallway of an apartment building. Those were the moments that showed her spirit lived on. She might have been taken away physically, but her ideals remained, passed on like seeds ready to grow into new acts of compassion and innovation. And so, in the city she loved, people continued to tell Pava's story, not in hushed whispers, but with respect and pride. They spoke of a woman who dared to dream big and who took steps to make those dreams real, even when it meant switching majors or founding a company before she was old enough to rent a car without extra fees. They spoke of how she remained humble despite her successes, and how she never forgot that business ought to be about improving human life, not just lining pockets. They also spoke of how she welcomed people with an open heart, perhaps a heart too open for a world that sometimes harbored evil. Today, if you walk through certain parts of Baltimore, you will find small tributes to her memory. Maybe a picture in a coffee shop or a mural painted by local artists who admired her drive. Her name and story are shared at business meetups where mentors guide the next generation of founders, urging them to combine technology with empathy. At local nonprofits, staff members talk about her in training sessions, reminding each other that the best solutions come from sincere caring. Even in city council meetings, her name occasionally arises when discussions turn to how best to keep communities safe and ensure that dangerous individuals are not set free prematurely. Though sadness permeates each memory, there's also a quiet hope. People realize that tragedies can be catalysts for important changes. The laws passed in Maryland, the improvements made in apartment security across the city, and the countless personal commitments people have taken on all speak to the idea that one life, however short, can leave a lasting impression that ripples far and wide. It is a reminder that even in the face of darkness, light can find its way through, especially when a community decides to stand together and uphold the ideals of someone they lost too soon. Like a leaf floating down a stream, Pava's story drifts into new spaces, carried by those who refuse to let her be forgotten. It appears in speeches at conferences, where speakers invoke her spirit of innovation and compassion as the future they all strive for. It is mentioned in classrooms, where students are taught that real success is measured by positive impact on real lives. And it is written into the hearts of everyone who felt the shock of her loss. A gentle but firm reminder that we should guard each other, and that sometimes a split-second decision, like holding a door open, can lead to unexpected and overwhelming consequences. As time moves forward, the sorrow may soften at the edges, but the essence of who she was remains. People hold onto the laughter-filled memories, her unwavering optimism, and her willingness to question the status quo. They remember how she believed in the power of technology to break down barriers and connect people to resources that could change their lives. They recall how she wanted to give back, to fix broken systems, and to create a better reality for those struggling with poverty or lack of opportunity. These are the pieces of Pava's soul that continue to guide the community, urging people to keep trying, to keep dreaming, and to never forget that one person really can spark change. If there is a lesson to be drawn from her story, it is that safety and trust must be balanced with awareness. We should not lose our willingness to help others or to welcome them into our shared spaces, but we also need to remain vigilant. The laws changed in Maryland in part because of the outrage sparked by Pava's death, illustrating that heartbreak can push a community to demand improvements in how justice is served. The fact that Billingsley was ultimately held accountable for not just one, but multiple crimes shows that the system can still correct itself, though it did so too late to save one of Baltimore's brightest stars. In reflecting on Pava's legacy, people find themselves torn between two powerful emotions. On one side is grief, raw and unyielding, for a life that was taken violently and without mercy. On the other side is a renewed sense of purpose, fueled by her example of leadership and service. She was a young woman who turned her sociological insights and coding know-how into practical solutions that any business could use. She taught people that complex technology did not have to be cold and impersonal. It could be used to build bridges and give voice to those who felt ignored. Stories like Pava's are not meant to leave us in despair, but to shake us awake to our responsibility to each other. Every day, we make small choices that can foster kindness or breed harm. We decide whether to trust strangers, whether to push for reforms that protect the vulnerable, and whether to encourage those with big dreams or shrug them off. In a way, her story is a call to action, reminding us that time is short, and we should pour our energy into creating the world we want to see. She was doing exactly that, right up until the moment her life was cut short. Even long after the funeral services and the legislative battles, her parents continue to share their daughter's ideals with the world. They keep the memory of her sparkle alive, sometimes through tears, sometimes through determined voices speaking in front of a crowded room. They talk about the budding entrepreneur who spent her days scheming up ways to tackle social inequalities, about the simple joys she found in connecting people who needed each other, and the unwavering hope she held for a world where success was not just for the privileged. And so, the story of Pava Marie LaPere remains a tapestry of bright colors and dark shadows, woven together by the threads of her hopes and the tragedy that befell her. We remember a desert girl who went east for school, found her passion in blending technology and sociology, and founded a company that aimed to make a positive difference in countless lives. We remember how she was recognized on a national stage, but stayed humble and compassionate, never forgetting that real success comes from helping others rise. We recall the frightening final moments of her life, a chance encounter with someone whose violence and history of wrongdoing should have kept her behind bars. We reflect on the heartbreak of her friends, colleagues, and family who still grapple with the pain of knowing she is gone. Yet in the end, her story continues to light the path for many. Through new laws, new startups, community gatherings, university dedications, and 1,000 small acts of kindness done in her honor, people carry on her work. She became, in memory, what she had always aimed to be in life, a catalyst for good. And although we cannot reverse what happened on that dreadful day in September, we can make sure her voice echoes in the hearts of those who come after her. That is what people mean when they talk about living a life that truly matters, one that transforms sorrow into progress and keeps hope alive, even in the face of unimaginable loss. No one can say for certain what Pava might have achieved had she lived longer. Perhaps she would have expanded EcoMap Technologies into global markets, changing the way businesses manage information worldwide. Maybe she would have invested more energy into nonprofits, focusing on children in underserved neighborhoods, teaching them to harness technology for creative problem solving. It is also possible that she would have returned to Tucson someday to start a program there, bridging the gap between her desert home and the bustling city she adopted. All of these futures remain heartbreakingly unrealized. But her legacy, though incomplete, remains potent. It stands as a testament that determination and compassion can exist powerfully together. As the months and years slip by, many will share this story of a brilliant young woman named Pava, whose life was stolen by an act of brutal violence. They will speak her name in the same breath as activism, innovation, and kindness, ensuring that she is not just another statistic. They will use her story to teach others about the flaws in our justice system, about the necessity of thorough oversight when someone with a violent past is released, and about the value of carrying on the missions of those who can no longer do so themselves. In that sense, Pava's life transcends the tragedy that ended it. Her passion lives on in every entrepreneur who asks, how can I use my talents to serve those in need? In every community that demands accountability from its leaders, and in every person who meets heartbreak with a will to do better, we find echoes of her unbroken spirit. And so, even amid the tears, there's a quiet promise that arises from her loss, a promise that we can learn, that we can honor her memory by doing our part to ensure no other bright light is snuffed out too soon. Yes, the story of her final hours is chilling and painful, a stark warning of the danger that can lurk in unexpected corners. But the broader story of her life is one of promise, determination, and an unwavering desire to build a fairer world. It is up to each of us to carry that story forward in our own lives, in our own choices, and in our own corner of the world. In doing so, we say, gently but firmly, that her life was not in vain, and